Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I'm here every week on Wednesdays, noon Eastern Standard Time, taking a topic deep dive and having a good time while doing it, and usually joined by an incredibly powerful bunch of participants in these weekly shows, and appreciate you guys doing that when you do. So today we have a pretty good topic, planned. Before we get into that, let's take care of the housekeeping, as I'm supposed to responsibly be doing every single live show. So number one, all the links are in the description. Get on my email list. If you're not on my email list, you are fucking up. And I send it every day. They're free. I tend to get a little bit more aggressive in emails than I tend to on the platforms because that is a better playground to do so. So you can go to masterchimletter.com or you could just go to the description, like I said before. Right now, we are streaming on my main YouTube channel and a couple of Facebook pages. And let's see who we got here so far. Judge Cohen says, the Chimcopter, legit, right? So I'm assuming that means, a reference to today's thumbnail, which I had a pretty good time making. Who do we got? We got Jesse, my man. Jesse, what's going on? Aaron, good to see you, Dawn. Johnny Groove, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. Jose said, what's up, MC? I need that gratitude shirt. Yeah, I don't even know if I have it for sale right now. Who knows? Send me a message and I'll send you a link. Yarn Saxon, what's going on, darling? Good to see you. Aaron says, I wear that shirt on my not so good days as a reminder. Absolutely. Jamie, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. So for those of you that aren't tracking a lot of my gratitude formula stuff, basically there's a spectrum that we're all on in our relationship with the assets and opportunities that we have. On one side is gratitude. On the other side is entitlement. And giving ourselves that sort of dichotomous lens to look at our assets and opportunities, it really forces us to label our relationship as one or the other. So if you are not actively being grateful for something, you are reverting or devolving into a sense of entitlement, which should never be something that we do, because amongst many other reasons, it is just not a formula that works. All right. Corey, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. All right, let's get into it today. A little Head of the Monster. All right, the title for today. I bought a bunch of monsters this morning. The girl at the store where I bought them was going, man, you sure drink a lot of these. And I told her, I said, well, if I enjoyed the taste of coffee, I'd be having just as much caffeine, but it would probably be 5 times as expensive. So, gratitude, right? Gratitude for white monsters. All right. So our mission, the everyday choice of fear or focus. That's the title of today's show. The everyday choice of fear or focus. Now, what prompted, me, having this topic for today's show was reflected in the thumbnail, where everybody is on mission to discover and determine what those drones are in Jersey. Well, if you are hoping to get onto the show today and me let you know what they are, I don't fucking know as much as you don't fucking know. They seem to be drones, right? But aside from that, I don't have much more information pertaining to that as anybody else, or at least not, I'm sure there's people behind the curtains that are a lot more informed than we are. But the fact remains that I have no fucking idea what they are more than you do. But it really instigated a thought process for me. And I've spoken about this in a couple of my mastermind groups these last few days, where there are people who really need to find out like what these things are. Are they aliens? And I don't mean the ones that speak Spanish. I mean the aliens like from Neptune and shit. Are they ETs? Are they Iranians? Right? Like a lot of the rhinos want us to think. I don't know if it is or isn't. I probably should have even made the joke, but a lot of people want it to be Iranians. A lot of people say, well, it's our military. A lot of people say it is, a bunch of like hackers that have gotten together to just fuck with everybody. Every permutation of what it could possibly be has already been shared. I have no idea what it is, as I said prior, but what I will say is that if you, based on whatever creative process you have, whatever, maybe it's the information you think you have combined with your imagination, whatever your sources of information are, collectively, if you were to design a list of all the things that those drones, and we're just using this drone thing as an application to discuss this, to illustrate and discuss this concept. If you were to take all those sources of information and create a list of what those drones could possibly be, I would challenge you to sort of turn them into sort of logical statements, if-then statements. If it is aliens from Uranus, these are the things I would do. If it is Iranians, this is the things I would do. If it is our government, these are the things I would do. And you look at the ones that are made up of reactive protocols that you are currently incapable of doing, right? So it's like if protocol 1 is, okay, if it's these people, load all the guns, right? You're like, all right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load all the guns. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have any guns. It's like, oh, okay, there you go. That's some work to do. If you go down the list and each one of these sort of dire-esque type of circumstances, these existentially threatening circumstances potentially, beg the question of how prepared you are. And you have a list as a result of your response to that. That list exists with or without the drone scenario. So again, let's bring it back for a second. The topic of today's talk is the everyday choice of fear or focus. A lot of people were stimulated, they were prompted by fear when, again, we're using the drone situation, that maybe morphed into paranoia in some, morphed into curiosity in others. Maybe it waned, and dissipated, fell by the wayside for yet another, subset of the people. But whatever it was, there was a common, I would say, dysfunctional level of interest in these drone things that are going on. The drone situation, I don't know if there's an official name for it, right? But the drone situation, I'll call it. The Jersey drones, right? The Jersey drones. Whatever everybody's response was, it should have, no matter what their process looked like from here to there, they should have wound up at a spot where they're like, okay, these are the things that I need. These are the things that I should build. These are the things that I should acquire. These are the things that I need to accomplish. These are the things that I need to remove, get rid of. It informs our level of preparation, right? And that level of being prepared for things that you could actually imagine are a possibility, I would say is, within the realm of what a man should be responsible for, regardless of any one such situation, like the Jersey drones. So what do I mean by this? If you're somebody who is worthless yesterday, there is no degree of information that is going to somehow make you valuable tomorrow. It's like yesterday, you're a useless piece of shit. Today, you get all this information. Tomorrow, you're valuable. That's not the way it works. So if we're looking to be, or if we're looking to value skills, capabilities, assets that would create the best scenarios or outcomes when shit hits the fan, I will say more generally, again, it begs the question why you haven't invested time in those things already, right? They say, I think I made this joke the other day. I'll make it again. I don't give a fuck. I'm not scared of making a joke multiple times. They say the best time to plant a tree is, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. I say the same is true for deciding to not act like a bitch. You should have never acted like a bitch. You should have squared that shit away a long time ago. But the second best time to stop acting like a bitch is today, is now. If one of these situations exposes, spotlights your vulnerabilities, there should be a gratitude even for these situations, is that, and that is, it is reminding you of the things you need to do. A couple of weeks ago, I think I spoke about this last week. A couple of weeks ago, Miguel, what's up, brother, man? Good to see you. John Wiley, what up? A couple of weeks ago, I was talking about that I lost power right here for a couple of days, right? Storm, dry, everything was dry, branches, power lines, etc. I didn't have power for a little over 2 days. It's not some fucking existential threat, but inconvenient as fuck. And, my family is pretty resilient in situations like that. We don't really miss a beat. We don't skip a beat. I'm somebody who philosophically, I will, maintain the ability to make sure nobody freezes to death, nobody starves to death. Nobody, like, there is something to be said for even my commitment to being prepared. But by the same token, I am not somebody who is invested in creating an infrastructure that keeps everybody continuously as comfortable as possible. If we're going to lose power for 2 days, yeah, it's going to suck for 2 days. Nobody's going to freeze to death. Nobody's going to starve. Nobody's going to, die of thirst or anything like that. That's not going to be an issue. But it's going to be uncomfortable, because I think when all said and done, I appreciate the response to being exposed to those types of situations. So I don't do everything in my power to eliminate their possibility. There are plenty of people who store food, right? Let's say, for an example, and you store food and it's like, how much food do you have? I have 30 days of food. Well, what happens if you need food for 40 days? All right, I should get more food. I have 6 months of food. Okay, well, what happens if you need food for 8 months, 9 months, a year? I have 2 years worth of food. What if you need food? At some point, there needs to be some sort of logical process that processes, a little redundant, that applies itself to what happens after. In other words, there's a point where you are no longer going to be prepared to the best of your ability, the way, at some point, the way you are now. You could store food. It's like, my whole thing is, it's like, okay, if you're going to store food, and like most people, I have food stored, and it's like, how much food do we need? Well, I'm really going to ask myself, well, what are the types of situations where I wouldn't have access to food? And I want to be able to sort of bridge that gap to the best of my ability. But it's like, yeah, I got 10 years of food in my house. It's like, well, that's great. I hope you have 10 years of ammo to fight off motherfuckers that ran out of food 3 days into whatever you're reacting from. There's a big picture to be considered, in other words. And there's a point where if we prepare as a response to our fear, we're always going to be behind the ball. We're always going to maintain an emotional component to how we deal with our relationship with these types of emergencies and scenarios, these inconveniences, all the way up to, existential threats. And I would say, if the drones, right, the Jersey drones, if they are from Neptune, there's only so much I could do aside from making sure I have food, making sure everybody's mindset and my family is strong, making sure everybody's healthy, making sure if, the power goes out, I have the ability to get water, making sure, there's a certain number of things I could do. If there's fucking aliens from Neptune, I would hope they don't go to Jersey first, but let's just say if that's the case, that's the scenario that I could deal with. But what if they're Iranians? Well, if they're Iranians, and this is some sort of first step in a attack or something, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to make sure we have enough food. I'm going to make sure everybody has the mindset. I'm going to make sure we have access to water in case the grid goes down. I'm going to make sure everybody's healthy. At some point, when we start looking at all these different scenarios, these possible scenarios, it all comes down to, well, whatever the emergency is, how about we start it off, step one, by not being a bitch? And we've done the work necessary, right, to already be capable when any of these scenarios presents themselves. I shared before in other talks that, my wife and I got married. I never knew I was going to get married. I never knew that, the time. Well, I know I was going to get married, but like I knew my wife. We got married shortly thereafter. All of a sudden, my bachelor pad, which had the like peanut butter and jelly and ramen noodles in the fridge, suddenly like I had like cable and stuff. And suddenly I had like every week I went food shopping. It's like all this weird shit required money. I didn't have the budget for that. So it was all right. I have to make money. This is 20 something years ago at this point. And every once in a while, to quote Jim Rohn, there would be more month at the end of the money. And my wife would be in a situation where she's looking at the bills, she's looking at what we got, and she's like, well, like, what are we going to do? We need, and I would make a joke of it, and I'd go, oh, I guess I got to go to work tomorrow, right? Because no matter what the situation was, the only resolutions that are available are on the road to me going to work and making more money. I got to make something happen. That's my job. So I wouldn't really fret or despair about this beyond my ability to get that conclusion. It's like, oh, well, I guess I go to work tomorrow. That's all there is to it. No matter what the Jersey drones wind up being, there's so many people that are feeding their fear. All right, they're feeding this curiosity. Oh, I don't know. Do you think it's this? Do you think it's like, well, okay. Like, who the fuck are you? Are you on the, fight the drone for America fucking squad? Like, are you like, no matter what the situation is, like, how does that change what you're fucking capable of doing? How does that change what you're responsible for doing? There might be a high level of capability, but your oaths and obligations require you to drive your energy and efforts elsewhere. Just how much of a difference is it supposed to make? Now, mind you, yeah, if they're fucking aliens from Pluto, right? Apparently from different planets. If they're from Pluto, that's pretty fucking crazy. That's pretty wild. I get it. I get that. What's the big deal? Okay, we got, fucking Martians and all these people walking around, whatever. I get the significance of that. But again, it's not about where my mind is wandering to. It's about where my fucking feet and my efforts are directed toward. And I see a lot of people, reacting emotionally. And I'm using the Jersey drones again as an illustration or an example, but this goes for anything that is perceived as some sort of existential threat. People lose their fucking minds. Like I've coached fighters. I've coached, I don't even know how many fights I've cornered at this point. Hundreds, dozens, over 100. I don't fucking know. A lot of them. I've run a school for 20 years. Whenever I see somebody panicking, whenever I see somebody, getting either panic scared or just anxious because of aggression and emotional, basically, the one thing I don't tell them is to relax. Hey, relax, calm down, relax. Because that is such an abstraction that in their heightened state, right? Their sympathetic system driven state, there is no processing of concepts like relaxation in their current situation. So I don't tell them to relax. I tell them to lower their shoulders. I tell them to breathe. I tell them to circle. I give them actions so they could focus. Because without the actions to focus on and comply to, we wind up getting stuck in our head in abstraction, and that is where the anxiety compounds itself. So it's like, we're getting invaded by this other country, right? Who gives a fuckistan just showed up, right? They fucking rode their goats over here, and they're ready to kill Americans. It's like, and did you hear that these guys are? It's like, all right, well, what the fuck are you doing? If you're a 400-pound, part-time cashier at fucking Wawa on the weekend, it's like, just like information goes to you to die because you have absolutely no utility. You're literally simultaneously somebody who might not know anything, and at the same time might not really need to know anything because you are so fucking useless. It's like, I wonder where those drones are from. Why? What the fuck are you going to do? Well, I just wanted, it's like, that's such a waste of fucking time. And that's the point of my talk today, right? That's the point. Let me get into some comments and questions. Aaron asks, how cold did it get in the house? So I happen to design in my house. I have like a great room, like a big room in my house that holds heat very well. It's also, it's an asset in the winter, and it is the primary argument for getting air conditioner that my wife uses in the summer. So it didn't get, it's at the coldest it got probably upper 40s, 50 degrees after 2 days. I don't know what that is in Canadian, in Celsius, right? But there was a time when I was younger, I thought the C stood for Canadian, but Celsius, centigrade, whatever. On Saxa writes, I feel like it's not always okay to tell a man he's acting like a bitch because they will in fact prove to you they are indeed a bitch, right? There's a backdrop I can't see, so I'm literate. I know how to read, so I get it, and you wrote that correctly. So yeah, it's hard telling a man he's acting like a bitch because it's a catch-22. Because sometimes you accuse a man of acting like a bitch because you think that's going to sort of prompt him to sort of step it up. But then at some point he reacts and responds in the equivalent of like him saying, well, yeah, I am a bitch. I get it. And, my whole thing is, I'll use a Nietzsche quote, that which is falling should be pushed. That which is falling should be pushed. It's very hard for me to not tell people about themselves. And, I've made a coaching career out of it. I've, both in my martial arts school and in my coaching programs. And it stems from a fact where, I admittedly, part of my identity I feel like I'm being fraudulent and inauthentic if I don't tell somebody information that I think they need to know, if I have some good intention, for their outcome. If there's somebody that I want to experience some sort of good outcome, it's hard for me to keep that to myself. And a lot of people over the years, they haven't been able to withstand that. Every once in a while, somebody will tell me, oh yeah, well, there's this about you. And what they don't know is that a lot of times, more oftentimes than not, I appreciate feedback. It's actually difficult for me to get people to actually give me feedback that helps. But I don't really give everybody permission to actually give me the type of feedback that I follow, right? So, like, I don't get my feelings hurt very easily, but a lot of people do. And the problem is, just like I don't give people permission to tell me things that I'm going to follow, I also understand the limitations of people's willingness to follow what I'm saying if they've never given me that permission. So what have I done? I look at my life, and it's a lot. I've engineered a lot of relationships that inherent in those relationships is a permission for me to tell people what I think they need to hear in order to do better for themselves in a way that I feel that I could do so. All that being said, if I'm around people that are acting dysfunctionally, they're acting like a bitch, right? Let's say blanketly, and I don't have or it is not accepted. I'm going to say permission, but just in the context of what they're willing to listen to. But they're not willing to listen to me tell them about it. It's probably not going to last. That alliance is probably not going to last because I'm not somebody that really refrains from talking about that. I don't look to shame people unnecessarily. I certainly don't want to bully people. Not that I don't, but my point is I do it, because of their response and reaction to being around me. But I'm not looking to kill anybody's energy. I'm not looking to sabotage anybody's alliances with their tribe and their family. Like, I will never talk poorly about a man in front of his wife. Like, these are some things that are codes and standards that I hold individually. But again, if you're around people that are acting like bitches and you're not allowed to say something, they're also sort of taking some of your power away at the same time, So to avoid that ever happening, I do reserve the right for letting somebody know when they're acting like a bitch, right? All right. Aaron says, after comes a lot quicker without good stores. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The people who think, and I've said this before, and I don't say this to sound like some fucking cool guy, but I am very limited in my ability to hunt. The only thing I've ever grown was weeds on my property that I had to pluck out, or most time I'm like, it doesn't look that bad. You just leave it. I'm not somebody that was raised, hunting and growing crops and things like that. Yeah, I've learned how to do many of these things to a almost, or if not barely, functional level. But let's be realistic. If shit hits the fan, there's so many people in this country. At some point, it's going to be, okay, who's the guy that has all the stuff? Because like a lot of people, I have other skills that I'm going to be reduced to. So inherent, and listen, I'm not trying to fucking sound like some savage, immoral, nut fucking job that I'm just going to become some warlord psychopath, if something happens. But by the same token, don't say that you are going to, you have a year's worth of food, and you think that if there are thousands, tens of thousands of people around you that don't have food, that part of having that food is also having the ability to protect it. Like, those things go hand in hand. It's like, yeah, I bought I'm having a party Saturday. So I bought all the ice that I need and I put it on my deck. It's like, well, it's probably going to melt before Saturday. So like refrigerating the ice goes along with the purchase, protecting food goes along with the acquisition of it in a shit hits the fan scenario. And it's really, you'd be making a mistake. You'd be being foolish if you were to ignore that context, right? Aaron continues, however, if you're smart, while you have the 6 months of food, you still have that long to come up with a solution, or at least make things better. And the whole thing is, and I'm going to pull out of that and segue into, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to, what are you planning? What's your plan? If you don't have a plan, then you're not going to be able to help exposing yourself to the influence of emotions in dealing with whatever situation you're facing. There should be a plan. One of the things that I do for my mastermind guys and my coaching guys is we do like a planning, like a strategic planning process. And one of the things I tell them that is a value in this type of approach, this sort of codifying the next steps of what I'm supposed to do, is that rather than the frustration of finding out how to be most effective on a daily basis, you replace that with the stress pressure of generating enough discipline to comply to a plan. And it's a lot easier to go all in on a plan than it is to sort of aggressively be creative. And so many people wake up every day and they don't have an idea of what they're trying to accomplish before they go to sleep that night. And I think it's just a missed opportunity. Everybody here, has access to my Master of the 24-Hour Cycle program, which I talk about the scale of a day, master the day. But there's a certain point where if you have longer term goals and objectives that you want to accomplish, and time-wise, these things are just out of your reach, it really, begs the question, well, what is the map? What is the road? What is the path? What's the plan from here to there? And there needs to be an understanding of the pace of that process. When I was a personal trainer, I'd have these housewives, right? Most of my clients were housewives, and they were awesome. We had a good time, and they would always say, I want to lose, 5 pounds a week, or I saw this infomercial for this thing, the plastic suit, the psyllium husk pills, the hydroxycut back in the day. There was all these gimmick type approaches to losing weight. And I would ask them, I said, well, what'd you weigh last year? And they would give me a weight. And I said, well, have you lost 52 pounds over the last year? And almost all of them did not. Not all of them even had 52 pounds to lose, but they were like, no, of course not. So I would say, so there's really not then a logical argument against losing a pound a week. Losing a pound a week, sure, it requires some degree of patience because your expectations are set so, astronomically, illogically. But if you're somebody who can maintain a pound a week, a year from now, that's 52 pounds a year. So a pound a week more than covers your goals, but you just got to be able to maintain the pace and the discipline to comply to the plan of the pace. So working these things out allows us to continue to do what I would say is everybody's ultimate goal, the best you can. Everybody's doing the best they can, but the sort of level of capability that comes out of that best could be greatly enhanced with a little bit of planning. In the email today, I wrote, some fear is healthy, but when do we see it as little more than a distraction? And this is another aspect to this. Like some people have suggested that isn't this convenient with all the things going on with the economy and Trump and Biden doing all these pardons and like whatever the narrative is, isn't it convenient that there is this sort of literally out of this world news story about this mystery that nobody could seem to solve? And I would say the reaction is something that exploits what is becoming more and more of a vulnerability in people today, which is they don't know what the fuck they're supposed to be doing. So they are so susceptible to the bright, shiny objects. They're so susceptible to the fast-moving objects that just pulls their attention away from what they're doing. And this could very well be that. Whether it is or not, I would say it is beside the point of everybody, I would argue and I'd advocate that you should be doing your best to become as capable as you can, regardless of what situation you're in. In a lot of my work, I talk about internal power and external power. Internal power is self-power. It's the ability to retain who you are despite the increasing stresses of your environment. External power is control. Most people are so, motivated and dedicated to getting control, to acquiring that external power. A lot of them don't realize the asset that having a high level of self-power, internal power, will give them, will be for them while they're looking to control their environment. I would argue that most people developing their internal power to a much higher level than it's ever been, or to continue to, be on that pursuit, they will find that the thirst, the desire for that external power sort of moves in the opposite direction. How many insecure people do you see on the internet with all the fancy cars and the big houses? And it's not that they have the fancy cars. It's not that they have the big houses. It's that they need all of us to see it. That's the one thing. There's not a lot of people that work hard for years and buy a Lamborghini and never tell anybody they have a Lamborghini. It's like, they're like vegans are, like you will know they got Lamborghinis, and it's really just I think a reflection of an insecurity. What are you looking to get from these strangers that you can't provide for yourself? Right. Another question I posed in the email this morning: when does a threat warrant our attention? Well, I would say that when the need to respond transcends the level of obligation we have elsewhere. There's a point where, okay, if it's raining out, I'm still going to the gym. If there's a blackout and tornado sightings and, I might be working out in my house. There's a point where we want to measure a threat in a context that still allows us to be on mission. There are plenty of times where I had sessions, right? I had a session scheduled and I'd had to text somebody. It's like, yeah, the power just went out. I'm not going to have it. I'll probably have it later. In the beginning, there was, the fuck that, I missed this thing. This guy was relying on me. And then after a while, it's sort of, you just build an understanding. Well, this was beyond my control. So I'm just going to do the things that I need to do. And I would say similarly, when we're facing a threat, Like every time you drive, there are threats. Right? My wife got into an accident a few weeks ago. Some guy crossed the double lane and hit her head on. My family's fine. That guy, not so much. But she was driving straight on the road, driving the way every one of us drives past hundreds, thousands of cars a day. One of the things we're not really, top of mind, maintaining a connection with consciously is the fact that there is this unwritten truce or alliance or agreement that, yeah, you guys are going to stay on your side of the road. I'll stay on my side of the road. If you're in a 2-lane road and you pass a bunch of cars, you're going 40, they're going 40, let's say. Every single time you pass a car, that is a potential 80-mile-an-hour collision that could have happened, but the two of you trusted each other enough to pass. Why? Because of our culture, because of roads, because of, just the reps. We've been conditioned to trust that people aren't going to cross the line, but anybody could do that at any point. So there's a point where the potential threat is high, or I should say that the potential for damage and danger is high. But the threat itself, which is probably a commentary more on the probability of that threat actually happening, is not high. So it doesn't, require any dysfunctional level of response. Oh, I'm not going to drive. Why not? Because any one of those cars could cross over and kill me, as soon as they wanted to. It's like, all right, well, a tough way to live, and then we have to ask ourselves, are we being functional? Right? So last question I wrote in the email, what does the vulnerability to fear-mongering say about a man and his mission? Meaning, if there's a guy who loses his focus and becomes afraid to the point of paranoia whenever there is some sort of threat being shared through the fear-mongering mainstream media, what does that say about the man and his mission? I would say that there's a disconnect. I would say that his mission is so either underdeveloped, uncommitted to, or non-existent that he is therefore malleable. I don't know if it was last week or the week before that, I said an ally could be the anchor that keeps a man from getting stuck in his head. When we have friends that look for us, that we look for, it's a way to keep us in the real world so we don't get caught in that spiral of negativity that so many people do. There was that scene from A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe where towards the end of the movie, he had seen people, imagined people and stuff. And there's a point where somebody talks to him. He's a professor outside the lecture hall, and somebody comes to talk to him, and he stops one of his students, and he goes, do you see this person? Is this person really here? And they're like, yeah. He's like, all right, it's a real person. They have to check. Well, sometimes we need that sort of external point of reference to keep us focused. And for a lot of times, the vulnerability to a good story where fear-mongering is concerned is diffused by a man's commitment to his mission. It's like any father, like your 3-year-old, 4-year-old son or daughter falls overboard into the water and they don't know how to swim. You're immediately going to get them. Yeah, but there's a shark in the water. Tell me, a fucking father, that means absolutely nothing to. Like, all right, maybe I got to hurry the fuck up. I can't just tread water, and calm them down before we get out of the fuck. But at no point am I not going to jump in the water. Because that's the mission. So that's the power of a mission in terms of its ability to give you a level of focus that you might not be able to maintain otherwise. Right? Aaron writes, my brother and I were in a head-on collision in 2009 because of some idiot. I broke both my femurs and was dead on scene. Holy shit. I was like, is that a typo? I was like, no, pretty much that's how you write it. On the day of my graduation, I met the guy that hit us at one point, and I think he felt my annoyance. Let's say, like, you Canadians are too nice. Holy shit, both your femurs. Both your femurs. I mean, gee, I know you got little femurs. If I broke my femurs, but I guess it's all relative. That sounds fucking terrible. And kudos to you for not bashing that guy's head in. Yeah, so it's really, when we're, the whole point of today's talk is there are always going to be these things that are distractions, but at some point we have to ask ourselves, are they, Is there such a thing as a convenient distraction? It's like this distraction got me out of having to deal with the shit that I'm struggling with. And I'm somebody who believes, movement is mandatory. Sometimes we take a break just to regain our movement, get ourselves focused so we can get at it. But at some point, we got to get back and doing our job. So to me, the guy who's, sitting at home saying, oh, it's definitely Iranians, because if you this, that, and the other thing, and the guy's, overweight, unhealthy, no wife, no kids, no friends, and he's doing it's like his obsession with what this disconnected reality is nothing more than a distraction from doing what he knows he should be doing regardless. And I guess that's my point. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world if you haven't squared away what's going on in your head, in your body, and in your tribe. Right. All right, guys, let's call it there. Good talk. I'm a little biased, but I had a good time doing it. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I always do. I'll be here next week. You know it. If you guys are watching this and you have not yet signed up for my emails, masterchimletter.com, go sign on, log in, opt in. That's the verb. Opt in to the list. All links are in the description. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you next week. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.